Welcome back to another FPL podcast, this time at a Game Week 30, and it's going to be something a little bit different. This will be the transfer plans and also the chip strategy guide for the rest of this season. I'll be building upon what I talked about in the team selection podcast and also going into Game Week 32 until Game Week 38. Let me know your thoughts down the comment section below. Leave a 5-star review on Spotify and Amazon Music. Follow me on those platforms and also like the video on YouTube. Let's get this to the 200 overall. If you want to see an updated wildcard team based on different chip strategies, also updated transfer tips to talk about 10 more players to buy, hold, sell and skip, and also the updated team selection as my proposed transfer isn't fully locked in, as I'll briefly discuss very soon. On screen you can see the projected fixtures from now until Game Week 38, but of course a few things are still up in the air, such as whether Chelsea and Tottenham will double in 35 or in 36. In Game Week 37 I think that's pretty much settled. We should get those fixtures, and of course we did get the confirmation of the Double Gameweek 34 confirmed fixtures on Saturday, and I talked about this in my recent videos and podcasts. But without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. I'm looking at bolstering the defence, and that's why Connor Bradley could come in for Alfie Doughty, who's yellow flagged, and also with those fixtures coming up for Luton Town, they're decimated by injuries regardless. I just think all these Luton Town assets are worth selling, and going for Connor Bradley is really good in the short term, especially the next two fixtures, both at home against Brighton and Sheffield United, and Liverpool will double in Game Week 34 against Fulham and Everton away. Having said that, Trent Alexander-Arnold could be back by Game Week 32 when Liverpool make a return visit to Old Trafford in that crucial game for the title race, and that's where Connor Bradley could start to falter as an FPL asset. And will he start both games in Double Game Week 34? I don't think so, and that's why this proposed transfer might change, and I'm still open to buying Salah in Game Week 30 instead of Game Week 31. In either scenario I would need to take a -4 hit to get him in, but if I'm looking at this week, the reason why I probably won't buy Salah with normal transfers or taking hits is because it requires selling Watkins when he's at home to Wolves. I'm much more open to selling Watkins when he faces Man City away in Game Week 31 instead, and I might need to sell Heung-min Son, who blanks in Game Week 34, and Spurs' fixtures turn for the worse around Game Week 33. It is compensated though by the doubles they will get in Game Week 37 and either 35 or 36. But on screen you can see my team, and for the benefit of those on the podcast, it would be Areola in goal, although it's a very close score between him and Dubravka. And if I do go for the Newcastle shot stopper, I would have an entire 11 full of home players, which is a massive bonus. Pedro Porro, Ake and Bradley as the back three, Gordon, Foden, Palmer and Son as the midfield four, Haaland, Solanke and Watkins up front, and my bench would be Dubravka currently, Saka, Zabani and Saliba. But as discussed in the team selection podcast, a lot could change. Saka could actually enter my starting 11. The same goes for Zabani over Nathan Ake, and of course Dubravka over Areola, which is a very close call to say the least. My current captain is Heung-min Son, but I'm very tempted by Palmer, and I think for those with Salah, he's the number one pick this week. Then it's between Son and Palmer for second place, and that pretty much completes the podium of the best captaincy options for Game Week 30. If we now look ahead to Game Week 31, and I also talked about this in the team selection, and after this segment I'll be showing you Game Week 32 and beyond, and that's where things get very interesting in these transfer plans. But Dubravka is in goal currently for Game Week 31 and my provisional plans, a back three of Saliba, Ake and Bradley, and a midfield five of Gordon, Foden, Palmer, Salah and Saka, and then Haaland and Solanke up front, and my bench would be Areola, Muniz, Zabani and Pedro Porro. So to get Salah back by Game Week 31, I will need to take a -4 hit, sell Son for Salah, and also make a downgrade Watkins to Muniz, who would then sit first on my bench with this provisional team, and my entire starting 11 will be full of home players, which is another massive advantage. To have that for 2 games in a row, 2 game weeks in a row, would be fantastic. Although, like I said, Areola versus Dubravka is a very close call to say the least, and the expected points is quite high according to fpl.team, 70.8 in Game Week 31, but it would require a -4. I think Salah will be the best captaincy option and Saka's my vice, but now this is where things get very spicy indeed. So for Game Week 32, I'd probably start Areola over Dubravka, and I could even theoretically roll the transfer, but we always say this and we kind of make plans for the future. You think your team looks great for a certain week, but if a certain player gets rotated and becomes a rotation rotation risk or he gets injured, suspended, that pretty much throws a span in the works, and that's where you have to adapt. And also you might be forced into a transfer. But in Game Week 32 I could roll and also have a very similar setup: Pedro Porro, Ake and Saliba as the back three. Also go for a midfield five of Gordon, Foden, Palmer, Salah and Saka, then Haaland and Solanke up front. And in terms of who to start in goal, probably Areola over Dubravka based on Wolves having so many injury problems, and Fulham away is very tough. I would expect them to score against Newcastle, and I've got Moniz first on my bench, which might be a pain whenever I end up benching him. Bradley second on my bench, and also Zabani in third. Probably a low scoring game week, at least that's what FPL.team suggests. And in terms of the captaincy, I think it's much more open in Game Week 32. You've got Salah away to Manchester United, you've got Saka away to Brighton, Haaland away to Crystal Palace, and for those that keep Heung-min Son at home to Nottingham Forest, that could be a decent shout. And that's where, you know, you're not going to find a perfect set of plans that allows you to tackle every single game week in the best way possible, but you've got to find a compromise and make some sacrifices somewhere down the line. And for those that aren't aware, I currently have two chips available, the wildcard and the bench boost. And what I'm going to do in this video and podcast as well is also talk about what I would do if I had the triple captaincy and the free hit available. But just remember, everyone's team is different. I'm not trying to give a cop-out answer and sit on the fence. It genuinely is really worth mentioning because your team situation is different to mine, and using a certain chip might be better for you in Game Week 34, for example, compared to myself. And that's where things can definitely become a bit more problematic, and also nothing is set in stone. But I think this season the chip strategies is much more open than it usually is, and that does open up the doors for some more rank rises and also a finale finish for this FPL season. Now in Game Week 33, just before we approach Double Game Week 34 where things get very interesting indeed, I can make a transfer and buy 8 Nuri and sell Pedro Porro. And once again, Areola or Dubravka, I'd probably go for Areola at home to Fulham compared to Dubravka facing Tottenham at home. 8 Nuri, Ake and Bradley could be my back three in Game Week 33. Gordon, Foden, Palmer, Salah and Saka all at home there, although Gordon does face Tottenham, and then Haaland and Solanke up front. And once again, apart from 8 Nuri here, everyone is at home, so another massive bonus that is provided here. And Dubravka, Moniz, Saliba and Zabani could all be on my bench. It's looking quite solid. Now in Game Week 34, I could get to 9 doublers, and I don't even need to take a hit with these proposed transfers. So I'd have 2 free transfers in Game Week 34. I'd use both of them to buy the likes of Eze and Luis Diaz potentially. I could also go for Odegaard instead, and the reason why I've gone for Diaz in this setup is to go for more Liverpool players, have that triple up, but I could even take a -4 hit for a goalkeeper and sell Areola to David Raya, and FPL.team really suggest it because the expected points goes up from 105.6 to 112.4, so even with that -4 hit taken into account, FPL.team suggests that the transfer and the hit will pay off, and I could also take that hit in another position, maybe for Erling Haaland instead, and taking a -4 or a -8 in a double game week isn't so shabby. But some people who are wildcarding in Game Week 30 or free hitting in Game Week 34 already would have those 4 to 8 points advantage over you if you decide to take hits. It's not a big deal, of course, but I'd be quite open to taking a hit in double game week 34 to get to 10 double game week players, and you don't necessarily need to. As we've seen this season, double game weeks have been a bit of a trap, and the same goes for blank game weeks, which have been absolutely awful, especially in Game Week 29. But if you look at double game week 25 and 28, quite underwhelming, especially 25, which had so many doubles and had so much promise and didn't really live up to the potential it had. But of course, this is all theoretical. I could kind of get away with any transfer in Game Week 34 because the plan would be to wildcard in the week after, which will be a quite popular strategy, to wildcard in 35 and then bench boost in Game Week 37. But for Game Week 34, I would have potentially Raya in goal with a double against Wolves away and Chelsea at home, and then an entire back four full of doublers in 8 Nuri, Saliba, Bradley and Zabani, a midfield four of Diaz, that could become Odegaard if I don't go for Raya in goal, Eze, Salah and Saka, and then Haaland and Solanke up front. So with that -4 hit, Haaland's the only single game week player in my starting 11 facing Brighton away. I've also got the likes of Dubravka, Palmer, Ake and Moniz on my bench, and the expected points is 112.4 with a -4 hit. That is still well in to the triple digit mark. I'd be very happy if I got to that mark in Game Week 34. Now in Game Week 35 I could wildcard into something like this. It's not set in stone of course, because a lot could change from now until we approach that deadline, but Dubravka could be in goal at home to Sheffield United. I could go for a double up in Newcastle defensively with either Lascelles, Trippier or Fabian Schär. The reason why I've gone for Lascelles is because it gives me enough money in the bank to just be very flexible with future moves, and I could potentially buy back the likes of Salah in Game Week 38 and not go without him for the rest of the season. Dalot and Ake will complete the back three in the starting 11. Palmer, Foden, Gordon, Saka and Son will be the midfield 5, and then Højlund and Erling Haaland up front, and my bench will be Petrovic, João Pedro if he's fit by then, Pedro Porro and Malo Gusto. Now going into Game Week 36, where fpl.team and Planet FPL suggest that Chelsea and Tottenham will double, that's where I could have at least 5 doublers for Game Week 36. I could even get to 6 if I go for Maddison from the get-go or buy him in for Game Week 36 specifically. Tottenham's double isn't great. They're facing Chelsea away and Liverpool away, and with Chelsea they'd be facing Tottenham at home and West Ham at home. But this provisional team would include Petrovic in goal with a double, Lascelles away to Burnley, Pedro Porro facing Chelsea and Liverpool away, and Malo Gusto, who's currently flagged by the way due to illness. He was withdrawn from the France under-23 squad. That's nothing to worry about in my opinion. There's plenty of time to recover by the Game Week 30 deadline. Palmer, Foden, Gordon, Saka and Son will be the midfield 5, and then Højlund and Haaland up front with Dubravka, Ake, Dalot and João Pedro on my bench. That's quite a strong bench in my opinion. The expected points is quite low, but that doesn't factor in the doubles just yet, only in terms of the graphic there, but they're not taking into account the expected points because it hasn't been confirmed just yet. Now this is where the triple captaincy comes in. Now you could even use it for the likes of Salah or Saka in Game Week 34, or a Heung-min Son or Haaland in Game Week 37, but if he had all chips available, I think the way I'd play it is either wildcard in 30 or 31, then probably use the free hit in Game Week 34. I'd also use the triple captaincy whenever Chelsea and Tottenham double, and I'd probably use it on Cole Palmer, and it looks like Game Week 36 is the more likely scenario. And then in Game Week 37, I would use the bench boost. Now, you could tackle that a different way. You could bench boost in Game Week 34, but with the lack of Tottenham players, since they're blanking, they're the only team to blank from now until the end of the season. That makes it a bit more difficult to kind of navigate. Now, that's where I think the free hit could play a part, and I definitely use that chip in either 34 or 37 depending on when you want a bench boost. And I still think Game Week 37 is very easy to build an entire 15-man squad full of double Game Week players, and you don't necessarily need to, because some single Game Week options could easily outscore the double Game Weekers. But in my case, I'm looking to use the wildcard in Game Week 35 and bench boost in 37. And just look at this, by the way, with that wildcard in 35 and only a handful of hits, maybe 1 or 2 maximum, and that's only if I want to be aggressive in certain Game Weeks like 34, I could build an entire 50-man squad full of doublers, and it would be Petrovic in goal away to Brighton and Nottingham Forest, Lascelles with a double away to Man United and Brighton at home. And you might be thinking, why is Lascelles in your team? Well, Botman is out for 6 to 8 months due to an ACL injury, as discussed in my recent videos and podcasts. Pedro Porro with a double, 2 home fixtures against Man City and Burnley. Gusto there once again doubling up on Chelsea defensively. Nathan Ake away to Tottenham and Fulham. Cole Palmer in the heart of that midfield facing Brighton away and also Nottingham Forest away. Then I'd have Foden, Gordon and Heung-min Son to complete that midfield, and then Højlund with 2 home games against Newcastle and Arsenal, Erling Haaland as well, completing that starting 11. And my bench, of course, it doesn't really matter since it's a bench boost, but it would be Dubravka, Pascal Gross, Dalot and João Pedro. Now, going for 2 Brighton attackers does seem a bit excessive, and that's something I could easily change. And by the way, back in Game Week 35, I could actually go for 2 Newcastle attackers instead, go for Anthony Gordon and Isak, and that would require no João Pedro. And like I mentioned earlier, I could go for Trippier or Fabian Schär instead of Lascelles. Doubling up on Newcastle defensively does seem a bit too much with the way they're defending this season, and that's something I could easily rectify with this wildcard. Like I said, this is all provisional, and it's just showing you how easy it is to wildcard in 35 and have a great bench boost for Game Week 37, at least on paper, because it's full of doublers. Will they actually get some points? Let's find out. I think the captain would be between Haaland and Heung-min Son, and FPL.team do favour the likes of Haaland as the best captaincy option. But like I mentioned earlier, the kind of double game week points aren't factored in just yet with FPL.team, and we're going to have to wait for official confirmation for game week 37 until the expected points reflects the double game week fixtures there for all of these teams. So that is my plan currently, to bench boost in 37, wildcard in 35, and I could still get 9 or 10 doublers very easily in game week 34. And there's a few things obviously to iron out. Connor Bradley might not be the safest transfer. I might have to go for Aït-Nouri instead, and then I can go for a Virgil van Dijk by the time we get to game week 34. Now finally in game week 38, which can't be forgotten, I could take a -4 hit, but it's not completely necessary because even Anthony Gordon away to Brentford is a decent option. The same goes for Højlund away to Brighton, but I could go for a -4 hit and buy back the likes of Saka and Salah and cover the best options in the game for the final game week of the season, which tends to be a very high scoring one in terms of goals compared to any other game week in the season. So Petrovic could be in goal at home to Bournemouth, Ake, Pedro Porro and Gusto as the back three, Palmer, Foden, Salah, Saka and Heung-min Son as the midfield five, and Manice and Erling Haaland up front. And in terms of captaincy, it's between Saka, Son and Haaland if they're fit by that stage. There's a long way to go for this season, and to be honest, I'm actually forgetting the elephant in the room and probably the best captaincy option, Mohamed Salah. He'd probably be my captain and Haaland my vice, but honestly, let's see what happens by the time we get to game week 38, and my bench will be Dubravka, Lascelles, Dalot and Joao Pedro. The expected points is quite decent for a single game week with 67.3. Even with a -4 hit, that should be quite good, and it might even result in a green arrow. Who knows? That'd be the hope anyway. But I'm very happy with these transfer plans. Of course, it's all provisional. A lot could change. For example, Petrovic and Malo Gusto could be in doubt because the likes of Robert Sanchez and Reece James are returning very soon, and they could actually usurp these players and take minutes off them and starts, and that's where the issues could lie. It might result in future transfers out, taking more hits, and a different course being set for my transfer plans. I think the chip strategy is, I want to say fully locked in, but I'm quite settled on bench boosting in game week 37 and not in game week 34, and also wildcarding a bit later in the season. But I think those that have all chips available probably will benefit because you can free hit in either game week 34 or 37. You have more flexibility and more time to think about these things and have more information at your disposal. You bench boost in the other game week, so if you free in 34, you bench boost in 37 and vice versa. And you can wildcard a bit earlier, and the wildcard is the most powerful chip, and to give it at least 6 game weeks for it to really come into effect, I think that is probably the optimal play for those with every single chip remaining. And if that's the case, I'd also probably use the triple captaincy on a Cole Palmer whenever Chelsea double in either game week 35 or 36. And of course, for some of you that maybe have the triple captaincy and don't have the free hit, you could use the triple captaincy on a Salah or a Saka in game week 34. So that's where the chip strategies and the team dependence all comes into play. And I won't be able to cover every single scenario possible, but I think if you don't have the bench boost, for example, then you could actually go for some single game week options like Ivan Toney from game week 33 until the end of the season and plot a different course instead. You don't need to have that much money on your bench, and you could fully focus it on your starting 11, having one decent bench option and being able to go from now until the end of the season with that setup. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Something a bit different where I talk about chip strategies and also my transfer plans until the end of the season. By the time we actually get to all of these deadlines, I think things will look very much different, and that is FPL in a nutshell. You can do all the planning you want, but sometimes football, with all the injuries, suspensions, rotations, everything that you could think of, it does play a part, and you have to set a different course and adapt accordingly. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind. Thank you very much for watching and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new on YouTube, and also leave a 5-star review on Spotify. Follow me on Amazon Music and all of those platforms. There are links in the description below for my Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and there's also much more, such as the Discord server, the FPL League, Drafthound, and of course, Spotify, Amazon Music. We're trying to get to 23k subscribers by the end of the season. We're getting very close to that milestone. It'd be very much appreciated, and a huge shout out goes to channel members and patrons. I'm looking to gift at least 5, possibly even 10 memberships in the next stream, the deadline stream for Game Week 30, so be sure not to miss it. I wish you all the best of luck for the upcoming deadline in Game Week 30, and of course, until the end of the season, and I'll see you next time.